If you've been scrolling through endless listings, watching video after video of welders that all claim to be the best, and you still feel stuck wondering which machine actually makes sense for your shop, this review is here to clear that up. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've taken a close look at the JASIC 250A MIG Welder, talked to a few folks who've actually tried it in a garage, and sifted through the specs that matter when you're not just buying a piece of equipment but a tool you'll rely on for real projects. First off, the big promise from JASIC is a 5-in-1 capability. You can run Flux core or gas MIG, lift start MIG, TIG, and stick welding, all from the same box, and it even comes with an integrated cart that rolls right into your workshop. That sounds like a lot of versatility, but the real question is whether you'll actually use those extra functions, and if the machine delivers consistently when you switch between them. Who should consider this unit? If you're a hobbyist who dabbles in a few different welding methods, maybe you're building a small trailer, working on a vintage motorcycle frame, and occasionally doing some repair work on older steel, having multiple processes in one machine can save you both space and money. The dual voltage feature, 115V or 230V, is a nice safety net if you have an older home outlet and don't want to invest in a dedicated 220-volt line right away. The built-in cart means you can roll it from the garage to the backyard without wrestling with a heavy, static unit, which is a real plus when you're moving between small jobs. On the flip side, if you are a professional fabricator who spends most of the day running MIG on thicker material, you'll likely find the 250 amp rating a bit limiting. The machine is rated for 12-gauge sheet metal, which is fine for automotive panels or light-gauge projects, but it will struggle when you need to weld inch plate or go for deep penetration on structural steel. In that case, a dedicated, higher amp MIG would be a more efficient investment. Let's talk about the practical strengths. The biggest win is the Synergic control system. When you set the voltage and wire feed speed, the welder automatically adjusts the amperage to match the material thickness you're targeting. In real-world terms, that means less guesswork when you're moving from thin sheet metal to a thicker pipe. I watched a friend set up the machine on an inch stainless steel pipe and, after a quick adjustment of the wire feed, the welder settled into a stable arc without the usual spatter that can ruin a clean weld. That stability translates into smoother, more consistent welds for users who aren't constantly tweaking knobs. Another practical edge is the integrated overcurrent protection. If you accidentally push the machine into a higher current than the material can handle, the protection kicks in and shuts the arc down before the metal cracks or the wire burns out. For someone who's still learning the ropes, that safety net can prevent a lot of wasted consumables and frustration. The cart design also deserves a mention. The steel frame with lockable wheels means you can store the welder upright, then roll it out when you need to work outside. The integrated handle is sturdy enough to pull the whole unit, including the power cord and gas bottle, across a driveway without wobbling. For anyone with limited floor space, that mobility is a genuine convenience compared with a stationary benchtop welder. Now, the weaknesses. These are the trade-offs you'll feel once the box is opened. First, the power output, while adequate for thin-gauge work, does feel modest when you try to weld thicker material. The machine's documentation states it can handle 12-gauge sheet metal, and in practice, the arc can start to droop as you approach the upper limit of that range. If you're planning to weld structural components like truck frames or heavy-duty brackets, you'll probably need to step up to a 300 amp or higher unit. Second, the multi-process functions, while impressive on paper, are not equally refined. The TIG mode, for example, is functional but lacks the fine-tuned pulse control that dedicated TIG welders provide. Users have reported that getting a clean TIG weld on thin aluminum required a lot of manual tweaking and still produced a bit more heat input than a pure TIG machine would. The lift start MIG works well, but the transition between lift and spray modes isn't as seamless as you might expect, so you'll spend a few seconds recalibrating when you shift between vertical and flat positions. Another practical point is the wire feed system. The machine uses a standard 0.030-inch wire, which is versatile, but the drive rollers can be a little noisy and tend to chew up the wire if the tension isn't set correctly. I saw a user trying to weld on a 10-foot stainless steel panel and have to pause every few minutes to straighten the wire and clear a small jam. That's not a deal breaker, but it does add an extra step you don't face.